There's an Oscar Wilde quote that goes, "Everything is about sex, and sex is about power." And I think this quote is really powerful because when you really look at the world, when you start to talk to people, something that I've noticed is that sex, romantic relationships, tend to drive so much of our behavior. And it's not talked about often because maybe it's embarrassing or it's shameful. But it's a strong drive that we all have. And a couple months ago, I was sitting in a philosophy class, and one of my classmates spoke up about incels. And she was the only girl in our class, and she was talking about incels, and for some reason, it just like awakened something in me, because she spoke so shamelessly about it and so curiously about it, and this like phenomenon, this epidemic of young men who are struggling to find purpose and meaning and connection, and they're so deeply deprived and they're so mentally fucked up. And there's this Netflix show that she recommended. It's called Adolescence, and it's about this 12-year-old British kid who literally murders another middle schooler, as like a sort of incel hate crime. Like, he identifies as an incel, and this girl kind of like bullies him, and it's this whole story, and it's heart-wrenching because you see this sort of like mind virus, this meme on the internet that gets spread to like little kids, and it infects them. And the show is fictional, but it's based on real events, and it's something that 100% could happen and does happen today. And I think it's heartbreaking because I am someone who grew up on the internet. I grew up chronically online, on forums, on Reddit, on social media. And this was in middle school as well. I remember like being on my phone or on a computer most of the day outside of school. And I've found myself in dark places. I've found myself feeling very lonely, unconfident, incompetent, insufficient, like scum of the earth. Like, there were times where I didn't feel comfortable making eye contact with people because I just felt lesser than. I didn't even feel like a human. And I realized, like, a lot of this discourse, a lot of this pain and suffering that people are going through, both young men and women, it comes from a place of deep insufficiency and just being beat down by society, beat down by the world. And when it feels like you're trying your best and nothing's working out for you, it's a lot easier to build this sort of identity around being a loser or being this sort of rejected group of society. I have a lot of empathy, and like my heart really hurts for these people who have sort of relegated themselves to this black pill, this settling for a lesser life or whatever it might be. Or even the people who sort of take it upon themselves to make this sort of a quest of like anger and resentment. They may not hate themselves, but they're bringing a lot of hate into the world towards women or towards other people who are doing better than them. And all that does is it keeps you down. I think fundamentally, being an incel, identifying with that, it's not so much about sex. I don't think that there is some magical line that you cross, whether that's an attractiveness or social skills or neurotypicalness or whatever, that immediately makes you unqualified to have romantic experiences, to connect with other people. I think that's purely a mental projection. And what it really stems from, I feel like, is this deep insecurity, and as a result, this deep desire for power. And I think this is especially common with men. Like, there's a saying, it's better to be feared than to be loved. And that comes from a deep existential anxiety, a deep need for control over the world. And that deep need for control, I think, stems from some sort of betrayal in their lives. Whether that was by your parents growing up feeling betrayed or neglected or abused by them, or oftentimes these like red pill guys, the most extreme of them were the ones who had their hearts shattered to pieces, the ones who were destroyed the most by their first love, who felt like they had the rug pulled out from underneath them, and as a result they developed the sort of coping mechanism to understand the world. They assume that all women are bad, or all romantic relationships are doomed to fail, or based in power. And it's devastating because it really pushes people down this rabbit hole of thinking they need to optimize their sexual market value, or optimize their attractiveness, or optimize their money, status, whatever it might be. And then you neglect this entire realm of emotional intelligence, communication skills, trust building, relationship building. Because all that other stuff, the sexy stuff, the bells and whistles, making yourself look good, appearing high value, that'll get you in the door. That's like your resume. That'll get you an interview, the first date. But it's not gonna keep quality people around in your life, women or men, friends or romantic partners. It's like the only people you're gonna attract into your life by embracing that is other people who are just as transactional, just as manipulative as you are. And I noticed this because this, in some ways, this was the path that I saw myself going down, trying to become the best, trying to climb this sort of ladder of status, trying to be like the most attractive, trying to compete in these like zero-sum games. And I found myself surrounded by shallow people. I found myself feeling even more lonely, even more isolated, because the people I was around didn't give a fuck about me. They didn't give a fuck about who I was. All they cared about was the next step up the ladder, the next step up the pyramid. I think the most profound experiences that I've had in the past 5 or so years throughout college was meeting people who were so deeply secure in themselves that they had no need to talk about themselves. They had no need to gas themselves up or portray themselves in a certain way. And that really opened the door for me to understand like what healthy relationships feel like, what trust feels like, to deeply trust someone who is deeply trustworthy and shows kindness and awareness and gives you grace even though you don't deserve it. I definitely didn't deserve it. One of the coaches I worked with for close to 2 years helped me realize something. I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid of needs. And it's like at the very base level, it's like safety and security. Then it's like relationships or something, and then I'm fucking blanking, but it's like physiological needs, psychological needs, and then at the very top it's self-actualization. And most people think that they're at the very top. It's like, oh, we live in an advanced society, like I have all my basic needs met, I have a job, I can feed myself. And so they dedicate themselves on this journey of self-improvement, thinking that they're self-actualizing. But in reality, they spend most of their lives chasing the wrong thing because they're still driven by safety needs. Now, they might not be physical, they might have food and shelter, but there's a deep sense of psychological safety and security that most people in the modern world, I think, have not cultivated, and they're not even aware that they lack it. I wasn't aware that I lacked this for years. It took a lot of self-reflection and a lot of, honestly, digging up painful memories and putting myself in uncomfortable situations to realize that I, in many ways, have not been deeply comfortable with myself. I've tried to patch that up and shield it in many ways, but confronting it is a whole different beast that requires genuine strength. And I think once we start to realize these insufficiencies, these gaping holes in our self-esteem, we can let go of this grand project of self-actualization and self-maximization and get back down to like the earth, the ground level of like our daily experience can be improved so much through little practices of self-love and self-awareness. And by cultivating a life, a personality, a self-image that actually feels safe and comfortable and enjoyable to live in, once that foundation is set, then we can actually pursue the things that matter the most deeply to us. Then we can stop wasting time chasing numbers and metrics and superficial goals and manipulative relationships. We can let all that shit go. But that requires work. And that work is a major priority of mine right now, is this like emotional intelligence, emotional awareness. And it's hard. It's fucking hard, dude. I feel like I've had a lot of ups and downs in the past couple years. And it's not that I don't normally have ups and downs, but as I've started to become more aware of like these micro changes in how I'm feeling and these micro reactions that I tend to just suppress and shut down and disassociate from, like as I become more like HD in tune with like the nuances in my emotional experience every day, it's fucking overwhelming. But as I've sort of taken these 10 steps forward, it feels like I'm starting to take my first step, these 10 steps backwards with the emotional experience. I feel like I'm starting to take my first step forward. I feel like I'm starting to learn how to live in my body, to experience